back to yet another episode of On the Grid Podcast, Season 4, Episode 28. This is our Azerbaijan Grand Prix review and our Singapore Grand Prix preview. I'm your host, Adrian for the fourth or fifth or sixth or seventh week running. And this episode, I am joined by my co-host, Ethan Evans, who is back from his little hiatus. Ethan, glad to have you back.
Good to be back. I can't say I watched too much of Azerbaijan, but I did catch up on the highlights and everything. So looking forward to this.
Yeah, from what I noted, really, there was a crash between Perez and Sainz, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. Piastri and Leclerc had a nice little ding dong battle, and that was really it from what I can remember. I can't really remember much else happening. Let's begin with qualifying. Top three in qualifying: Charles Leclerc in first, Alex Albon in second, and Oscar Piastri in third. But what's interesting, the bottom five: Daniel Ricciardo, okay, maybe a little bit of a shock. Valtteri Bottas, Guan Yu Zhou, not really a shock. Esteban Ocon, could you say that's a shock? Not really. Sandwiched in between all of those, Lando Norris. Lando Norris managed only 17th place in qualifying. Ethan, from what Lando said on his team radio, he experienced a lot of problems with his lap, with yellow flags, etc., etc. Did it just come out at the wrong time?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is though, when you're last on the road, you always run that risk, especially around a street circuit like Baku. How many red flags have we seen in qualifying over the years, or yellow flags on the last lap? So, in my point of view, you only really want to be at last on the road if you need that track evolution. So for Lando Norris and McLaren, they should have really been at the front, get their lap in, have a clean lap, and then they're not taking that chance. So as far as I'm concerned, they've only got themselves to blame.
Is there really much of a shock with the rest of the bottom five? Daniel Ricciardo, Valtteri Bottas, the two of them, Daniel Ricciardo and Valtteri Bottas, relatively ran well for their respective teams, Williams and Red Bull and Mercedes in the past. Guan Yu Zhou, Esteban Ocon as well. Much of a shock there, really, for you?
I mean, maybe Ricardo, being the only other one, but for Esteban Ocon, no. Sauber's definitely not. So yeah, maybe Daniel Ricciardo, you expect him to get to around the 12th, 13th mark, but not other than that.
And on to Q2, the top three consisted of the two Red Bulls of Verstappen and Perez in first and third, and sandwiched between them was Charles Leclerc, who was rapid all weekend. His Ferrari car was seeming to produce things that we've not really seen before. I was pleasantly surprised with Charles Leclerc's pace and overall kind of the machinery, how that Ferrari kind of trickled into Q3 and into the race, because Ferrari haven't really been on top of things. In Monza, it was a different story because they completely mastered a one-stop strategy. But I wouldn't say the car was the quickest, maybe the second quickest behind McLaren, but I don't think they were the quickest car. But in the bottom five of that Q2 session, Oliver Behrman making his second appearance in Formula One, qualified 11th, with Yuki Tsunoda, Pierre Gasly, Nico Hulkenberg, and Lance Stroll in the bottom five as well. We obviously found out later on that Pierre Gasly was disqualified due to a little bit of misfueling from his team, and he was disqualified from qualifying. But Ethan, what have you made of Ollie Behrman? I don't know what the accent that was made. I don't know what that accent was. What have you made of Ollie Behrman? Out qualifying Nico Hulkenberg. Obviously ran very well in his other F1 appearance in Saudi Arabia. Is he going to be the rookie to keep an eye out on, especially from the rookies that could be appearing on the grid next season? Is he the one that everybody's going to be closely keeping an eye out on next season?
Absolutely, yeah. I thought he'd done a fantastic job. You've got to look at his first two races in Formula One. They're not the easiest tracks, are they? Jeddah and Baku. I don't think there's too many more difficult than the two of them. But a fantastic effort from him. To be so close to Q3 as well, it really is remarkable. And then yeah, he is just unlucky there, isn't he? Really, to miss out on Q3. But a lot of positives to take from him. And beating Nico Hulkenberg in qualifying, who has been fantastic over the last couple of years, is a real feat.
On to Q3, the top in the session was Mr. Charles Leclerc, who beat Oscar Piastri by over 3 tenths. It was a commanding, oh, pardon me. It was a commanding advantage from the Monegasque driver over Oscar Piastri in second, with Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez on row two in third and fourth. George Russell was joined by Max Verstappen on row three in fifth and sixth. Lewis Hamilton qualified seventh, but dropped to the back of the grid due to a new engine. So he dropped back to 19, back to the pit lane, but he qualified seventh with Fernando Alonso in eighth. And then let's talk about the two Williams drivers because I think the top eight here are in a class of their own. Of course, Fernando Alonso is probably the outlier from that top eight, but we know the quality of Fernando Alonso. Franco Colapinto, right? The kid is second ever race in Formula One, or third ever race in Formula One, should we say? Because he stepped in, or a second, yeah, it was his second race. Yeah, what am I talking about? It was a second race in Formula One, stepping in for Logan Sargent mid-season, and he's not only delivered points for Williams, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, but he's able to outqualify his teammate. What a feat for Franco Colapinto, who he's had a very steady career trajectory as we speak. Formula Two has the season so far has gone his way very well. He's in the top 10 in the championship there. Obviously, he won't be performing in that championship ever again, likely, because he's in the shop winner for Formula One. But what a feat, Franco Colapinto. Is he another one that could potentially get a seat next season? I mean, though, there's only a handful of seats left. But is he one that could crop up to maybe a Sauber? Are they going to maybe keep an eye out on him for the rest of the season and maybe take him under their wing for 2025 potentially?
I think Williams will be very reluctant to let him go. Like I said in the previous podcast, I think Sainz will have some sort of clause in his Williams contract where if one of the top teams come in for him, he will be allowed to speak to them and they will be allowed to leave. Even though he's on a multi-year contract at Williams. So Colapinto, in my view, would be that reserve driver for Williams. And I don't think they would let him go, almost like a Liam Lawson situation. But you've got to say he's been absolutely outstanding since he's come in. And he's come in and delivered at a level equal to Albon. Albon beat him out at Monza. And then, this weekend, he outqualified Albon, which is something that Logan Sargent never do. We'll get onto the race in a short while. But again, a fantastic performance from Colapinto. Really, really good driver from someone who'd got a lot of stick when he came into Formula One about why Logan Sargent was dropped, even though it was a fully justified decision.
Yeah, so before we do our average driver ratings and whatnot, let's look at the starting grid for a race. So obviously the top seven, the top seven, no, the top six. The top six was unchanged. So Leclerc, Piastri, Sainz, Perez, Russell, Verstappen were as they were. Hamilton and Ocon dropped. Well, Ocon started at the back of the grid anyway, so he started in the pit lane. Hamilton dropped out of the top 10, which promoted Alonso to seventh, Colapinto up to eighth, Albon up to ninth, and Behrman started in the top 10 for a second race running in his second race ever in his Formula One career. Yuki Tsunoda was promoted to 11th, with Hulkenberg 12th, Stroll 13th, Ricciardo 14th, Norris started 15th, Bottas 16th. Guan Yu Zhou had a new power unit but started 17th. Gasly got disqualified, so he started at the back of the grid technically in 18th. And then Hamilton and Ocon started from the pit lane. Right, are we clear? It's go time. Let's go to our average driver ratings. Oscar Piastri qualified in P2, finished the race in P1. It's a 10 out of 10, I think. His racecraft, his move on Charles Leclerc into turn one to snatch the lead, and then he just drove into the distance when Charles Leclerc's tyres completely fell off. It's a 10 out of 10. I would take him down a minus point for trying to climb out of his car too quickly and almost falling over the top of his car when he was celebrating. I would take down that as a -1. But overall on the race, I think it's a well-deserved 10 out of 10. And another win for Oscar Piastri, which kind of puts him closer to Lando Norris and closer to Max Verstappen, especially with them finishing in fourth and fifth. So he could be yet another key figure in the drivers' championship battle, but for Azerbaijan, it's a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, completely agree. 10 out of 10. Fantastic performance. And what a move to clinch the victory. Won that overtake on Charles Leclerc. Brilliant move. Absolutely sent it. And yeah, you've got to say, second race win for Piastri, and it was fully justified on a weekend where a lot of people were talking about him becoming that second driver and supporting Norris. He absolutely delivered the goods.
On to Charles Leclerc, who qualified in P1, a tremendous lap to put himself in P1, and then finished the race in P2. Okay, my Ferrari bias hat may be on for this one. But it's another driver that I've given a 10 out of 10 for. Don't get me wrong. It's a race where Charles Leclerc, yes, he did finish multiple seconds behind Oscar Piastri, and whatnot. But I think to say that he held off Oscar Piastri for so long, and then obviously he had his troubles with his tyres and whatnot, and kind of had to struggle through that phase, and was caught up by Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz in the end. And he held them off until they had a little ding dong battle and obviously crashed out the blooming idiots. Yeah, I've gone with a 10 out of 10. It might be me having my Ferrari bias hat on and saying it's a very good podium. It arguably should have been a win if his tyres held on. But I think it's a well taken pole position. It doesn't add to the Charles Leclerc pole position to victory percentage, not at all. But I still think he had a very, very good race, and I still think he delivered what is and what was a very good podium and a very good second place. So arguably my Ferrari hat is on, but I've gone with a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I can't quite go for a 10 out of 10 for Charles Leclerc. It was almost perfect, but not quite. I think maybe he could have held off Piastri, or at least had a go back. He never quite went for the move like Piastri did. Piastri took the chance, took the gamble, and it paid off. It was an excellent move. Leclerc didn't quite do that. So I've got to say it's not a 10 out of 10 performance for me. It's a 9 out of 10. A very good performance. Can't take anything of that away from him, but not quite 10 out of 10 material.
So on to George Russell, who qualified up in P5 and finished in third place, kind of claiming that last podium place due to the two behind them, ahead of him crashing. I'm torn between an 8 and a 9, and I think I'll go with an 8.5, purely on the basis that he's kind of clinched that podium without doing anything. I think he was a long way off the podium places, and was lucky to kind of gain that P3 finish because the two ahead of him crashed out. So I'm going to go with an 8.5 out of 10. Still, don't get me wrong, still a very, very good performance, but I just think that in terms of actual race pace and in terms of how the race played out, George Russell was absolutely nowhere compared to that top four. So yeah, I've settled with an 8.5 out of 10.
For George Russell, I've gone for an 8 out of 10. It might be slightly harsh on that part, but I think he inherited that podium, obviously, but he was nowhere near it. He was comfortably fifth for about 90% of that race. Yeah, he didn't quite have the pace to challenge the top four, and inherited it through a bit of good luck, but still a good performance. I think it was a good performance compared to what that Mercedes was. I don't think it's particularly impressive this weekend. So yeah, an 8 out of 10 from me as well.
On to Lando Norris, who qualified in P17 but started in P15, and finished the race up in P4. I've still gone with an 8 out of 10. The qualifying performance was absolutely nowhere to be seen, and it like going past that point, it should be a 1 out of 10 for his qualifying performance. But I think it was damage limitation for Lando Norris, and what was crucial for Lando Norris in this race was finishing ahead of Max Verstappen, which he did, gaining 11 places if you go from his starting position. So I've still settled with an 8 out of 10. Like I say, it may be a little bit lenient on my behalf, but I think it was a very much a damage limitation race for Lando Norris, and I think to finish ahead of Max Verstappen, who he started 9 places behind is a very, very good feat. So yeah, an 8 out of 10 from me.
Yeah, I agree. I can't give him any higher than an 8 out of 10 because of his qualifying. Simply wasn't good enough. He should have. I know you could argue it's a mistake on the team's part, but at the end of the day, Lando Norris should also be saying, "No, I want to go out earlier and get that lap in." Because although yeah, and the Piastri as well was only a few seconds up the road, and he got the lap in, so. He also made that mistake, and I think the yellow flag covers up a lot of that mistake because would he have been safe? Most likely, but it was by no means an impressive lap from Norris. But in the race, you can't argue with what he's done. It's an excellent performance, and he's gained 2 points of Verstappen. So this hypothetical championship battle, it's damage limitation, as you said. But yeah, it's too little, too late for me. Lando Norris is nowhere near it, but it's a good performance to go from 16th to 4th is a good performance.
On to the championship leader, Max Verstappen, who qualified in 6th and finished in 5th. I've gone with a 7 out of 10. I think that Max Verstappen won't be happy at all. He even said it himself that the changes that they made from practice to qualifying completely unstabilized the car, and it just went to pieces. It just fell apart. So from that standpoint, again, I think Max Verstappen was very much it was damage limitation on his behalf as well with this race. Still finishing in the top 5 is good enough to say that the two in front crashed out, and if it wasn't for those two in front, he would have finished in P7. So yeah, 7 out of 10. I think it was a good race for Max Verstappen, just obviously not what he's used to at all. So 7 out of 10.
I think maybe I'm being a bit too harsh here. I've gone for a 5 out of 10 for Verstappen. He's been out qualified by Perez for the first time in over a year, and then he was about 20 seconds behind him until that crash. And I can't take anything away from Perez. It was an excellent performance from him, but it showed there was performance in that Red Bull. Whether they were running different setups or what, who knows? But there was that performance in the Red Bull to be competing for a podium position, especially given the fact that Norris was starting down in 16th, that Hamilton was starting from the pit lane, and Mercedes didn't have great pace all weekend long. There was the potential to fight for that podium with Perez, with Sainz, even with Leclerc. And you got to say Verstappen's pace was nowhere. And that is the first time in a long old time you can say that Max Verstappen has not maximised his result.
On to Fernando Alonso, who qualified in P8, started in P7 and finished in P6. I've gone with an 8 out of 10. It's a very tricky one with Fernando Alonso, purely because the Aston Martin, some races it's nowhere to be seen. Some races is absolutely outperforming. In some races it's just bog standard. And I think this race especially, the Aston Martin showed a little bit of improvement in the right direction. And they definitely showed that there is a little bit of fight in them. Whether that's kind of come from the bounce of Adrian Newey joining the team only last week, or whether there's something actually been done with the setup that's actually made the car more stable. I don't know, but I think it's one of the better Fernando Alonso performances so far this season, or should I say so far in the last couple of races. So I've gone with an 8 out of 10. It's a good performance. Fernando Alonso, it's a step in the right direction, but Aston Martin just need to maintain this and keep going in an upward trajectory and not go backwards like they have done for the last season or so.
Yeah, I've gone for a 9 out of 10. Maybe I'm being a bit I'm jumping on the fact that he did finish P6. I know he inherited 2 positions at the end there. And maybe that is affecting my judgment a little bit. But again, even without that P8, where that Aston Martin has been struggling a lot over the last couple of seasons, really. Well, since about the halfway point of last season, you've got to say that Aston Martin has really struggled. Yeah, like I said, a very good performance. I can't take anything away from him. And yeah, you've got to say that he's maximised the result there. I don't think Aston Martin walking into this weekend were expecting a P6. The only reason I haven't gone for a 10 out of 10 is because he inherited those 2 positions.
And the 10 out of 10 for me arguably goes for the 2 drivers behind Fernando Alonso in Alex Albon and Franco Colapinto, who qualified in P10 and P9 respectively, started in P9 and P8 respectively, Albon finished ahead of Colapinto in P7 with Colapinto in eighth. I've given both of them a 10 out of 10. Double points for Williams, 10 points in total. Obviously, would have been a little bit less if Sainz and Perez would have finished the race. It would have been a P9 and a P10 finish for the two of them. But still, what a tremendous race for Williams, finally showing signs of progress. The upgrades are starting to work, and they've shown consistency from Zandvoort to Monza to Azerbaijan. So both of them well deserved of a 10 out of 10 performance for that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I've gone for a 10 out of 10 as well for the two of them. Maybe you expect a little bit more performance from Albon because compared to his teammate, because obviously Colapinto is only in his second race. So maybe you could argue you give Albon slightly lower, but I've gone for 10 out of 10 for both of them. They got 10 points this weekend. I think that's about as many as they had all season. It might even be more than they had all season. But Franco Colapinto in 2 races has more points than Logan Sargent did in 36 races. So there we go. He also he has quadruple the amount of points that Logan Sargent had in 36 races. So it goes to show that James Vowles made the correct decision. Great effort from both of them, and they fully deserve that result.
James Vowles simply did. If our cameras were on, like my camera was on a few episodes ago, the viewers would see me do the Marcus Rashford celebration because James Vowles knew, and he did make the right call with Franco Colapinto. I think he's deserved. Maybe it's early doors, okay? Maybe he needs to do what Liam Lawson did, have 5 races and show what you're about, and then we can make your judgment because we know what happened with Nick De Vries. He had a race, he went into F1, and it all went bottoms up. So yeah, I think Franco Colapinto will definitely benefit from having this sort of, let's say, half a season at a team like Williams, where he is the development reserve driver. But on to Lewis Hamilton, who qualified 7th, started in P19 slash the pit lane, and finished the race in P9. I've gone, I don't know whether I've gone lenient again here. I've gone with a 7 purely on the basis where he's made up the places that he's lost. Don't get me wrong, I think he has made the right call of potentially taking a new engine and putting it into his pool because Azerbaijan, it's a very, very tricky track. You've only realistically got one straight where you could. Well, I mean, you've got the straight coming out of the cattle section, but can you really attack in that section? I don't think you can. The start finish straight is realistically the only place you can attack, and then you've got the second DRS zone, which is also tricky to attack in, as we saw what happened with Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez later on in the race. But yeah, I've gone with a 7. It's not a tremendous Lewis Hamilton performance. He's made it up into the points from basically starting in the pit lane. So it's for me, it's a good enough performance. It's not a Lando Norris performance where he's made it up to P4, but still, points are points. And I don't think he did necessarily a bad job in the race. He just maximized what he possibly could do. So it's a 7 out of 10 from me for Lewis Hamilton.
I gave Hamilton an 8 out of 10, and I know it might be a bit. Yeah, I hear what you're saying about he didn't have as good a performance as Lando Norris, but Lando Norris is in a quicker car. Lewis Hamilton also qualified in a decent position, whereas Lando Norris didn't qualify, qualified down there. And the reason Hamilton started low was because of taking that fresh engine, which should suit them at a later date as we go forward towards the end of the season. So I hear what you're saying, but I've gone for an 8 out of 10 for Lewis Hamilton as well, given the fact that Mercedes was probably the 4th quickest car, I would say, this weekend. I think the Red Bulls had the slight edge over it, as you saw from Sergio Perez, able to mix it with the Ferraris. So a good performance from Hamilton. It's a shame that he took that penalty. But yeah, it is what it is. We look forward to the next few races to see whether that can benefit them in the long run.
On to Ollie Behrman, who qualified in P11 but started in P10 and finished the race in P10. Is it stupid if we give him a 10 out of 10 again and keep his 100% record of 10 out of 10s? Because I'm very much on the fence between giving him a 9 or a 10, purely on the basis that he's outqualified Nico Hulkenberg, and 2, he's made it in the points to create a little bit of his own history of scoring points with two teams in the same season, the first ever driver to do that. It's his own little bit of history. You know what? Bun it. I'm going 10 out of 10. Let him have his 100% record still.
I've gone for a 9 out of 10. It would have on the face of it, it would have been a 10 out of 10. I can't give him a 10 out of 10. If he had had that position and hadn't inherited those two places from Sainz and Perez at the end, it would have been a 10 out of 10, finishing P10. But because it was essentially a P12 finish, I've got to give him a 9. So he gets knocked down to a 9.5. So it's still almost perfect, but just not quite.
Yeah, I've only given him a 10 out of 10 because he's made his own little bit of history. That's my only reasoning behind me really giving him a 10 out of 10. He's the only driver ever to score points with two different teams in one season in two races in his Formula One career. We get to see a full season of Ollie Behrman next year. Hands up who's excited because I definitely am. On to Nico Hulkenberg, who qualified in P14, started in P12, finished in P11. If we're giving Ollie Behrman a 9.5 overall, I've given Nico Hulkenberg an 8 out of 10. I still think he had a very good performance. On the face of it, if obviously Sainz and Perez would not have finished, he would have finished in P13, and maybe it would have been dropped a little bit lower. But I still think he had a very good race. Obviously, he's not going to be very pleased getting out qualified by a younger teammate who is in his second season, is in his second race in F1. He's obviously not going to be impressed that he finished behind his rookie teammate. But I still think Nico Hulkenberg produced some goods, produced a very good race, and deserves an 8 out of 10 from me.
Yeah, so for Nico Hulkenberg, again, I thought it was a good performance as well. I've gone for a 7 out of 10 though, because he was beaten by his teammate who's driven this car driving that car in an F1 race for the first time. So it was a decent performance from Nico Hulkenberg, and it's a return to a good performance, which is what he needed after the last week at Monza. But it's just not quite at that level when you consider that he was beaten in qualifying. I know they had the team orders to switch them, or maybe they switched them back, I don't know. But then he was overtaken again in the race and beaten to the point by his teammate. So it's a good performance, but it's not great.
On to Pierre Gasly, who qualified in P13, but it was disqualified, so we started P18. And then he finished P12. If I've given Nico Hulkenberg an 8 out of 10 and you've given him a 7, I want to put Gasly down a little bit lower. I've given him a 7, but I think that's a little bit too high. So I'm going to drop him down to a 6.5. Purely on the basis it wasn't his fault necessarily that his qualifying was he was disqualified from qualifying. He qualified into P2. He outperformed his teammate. And beat his teammate in the race. I mean, his teammate did start from the pit lane, but Pierre Gasly did start from the back of the grid, essentially. So I've gone with a 6.5 out of 10. Alpine are a tricky one, especially because they're so up and down. You don't know what to expect from them. One race they could be amazing. One race they could be absolutely shocking. This race was probably a mix of those two, so I've settled for 6.5 out of 10.
Yeah, I've gone for an 8 out of 10 actually for Pierre Gasly, because he's disqualified from qualifying and then to finish all the way up in P12 is a good effort, especially when his teammate Esteban Ocon has started around the back of the pack as well, but had a poor qualifying, and then he's finished all the way down in 15th, over a lap down. So I think for Gasly, who did actually qualify up in 13th, disqualified for something outside of his control, started from the pit lane, to then go all the way through, beat his teammate, finish up in 12th. I've got to give him an 8 out of 10. I thought it was a good performance from Pierre Gasly.
Daniel Ricciardo up next, qualified P16, started the race from P14, finished in P13. I think it's a bog standard 6 out of 10. I wasn't very impressed by Daniel Ricciardo. I think it was meh. I don't think it was an amazing performance from Daniel Ricciardo. I just think it was very, very average. That's about it. 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I agree. 6 out of 10 for Daniel Ricciardo. Not the performance. It was okay. Yeah, like you said, it wasn't anything exceptional. it wasn't anything terrible. It was an okay performance, and that is reflective of his career.
Guan Yu Zhou up next, qualified P19, started in P17, finished the race in P14. I've also gone with a 6 out of 10. I think it's another. He joins Daniel Ricciardo and Esteban Ocon in this grade with a 6 out of 10 because I just think the three of them just had okay races. They weren't amazing. They weren't shocking. They were just okay. I can't really explain it much more than that. I don't think they had any potential of gaining any more positions than they did, especially with four retirees in the race. Yeah, I always thought they were going to finish around the back end of the pack, and they exactly did that. So if we won a group, I gave Guan Yu Zhou a 6 and Esteban Ocon a 6 out of 10. So that's out of the way. That little pack is out of the way.
I gave Guan Yu Zhou a 5 out of 10. Maybe that is a little bit harsh, but yeah, 14th. He's beat his teammate at least, so that's something we haven't been able to say too often. And then Esteban Ocon, I gave a 4 out of 10 because again, look at Pierre Gasly. Started behind him, started from the pit lane. Esteban Ocon started, I think it was 16th. I think he started, 16th or 17th. And then to only finish 15th behind his teammate over a lap down, and at least it was a good 40 odd seconds behind Gasly as well. It's just not good enough for him, and I think he's looking forward to his time at Alpine ending and a new venture at Haas maybe. And then for Valtteri Bottas, I went for a 5 out of 10.
Yeah, just to end off, Valtteri Bottas I also gave him a 5 out of 10. Onto our retirees. So Carlos Sainz for me got an 8 out of 10. I think he had a very good performance up until that crash. Same with Sergio Perez. I gave him an 8 out of 10. And then for the two basement boys, I just gave them a mid grade of 5 out of 10 for Lance Stroll and Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki Tsunoda, very unfortunate in the last couple of races. He's just not had the best of luck, has he? But yeah, so an 8 out of 10 for Carlos Sainz, an 8 out of 10 for Sergio Perez, and Lance Stroll and Yuki Tsunoda share a 5 out of 10 each from me.
So yeah, I agree with you on Carlos Sainz. I also gave him an 8 out of 10. He was fighting for that podium position for the last two podium positions actually. He's in a good battle with Perez and Leclerc. I gave Sergio Perez a 9 out of 10 because I thought it was a very good performance up until that crash. I agree that it's a racing incident, but I will say that I think Leclerc has a part to play in that because Perez is actually ahead of Leclerc at the apex. Leclerc forces him off the track, and I haven't seen anybody speak about that. I know Perez is going around the outside, but he's got his rear wheel is level with Leclerc's front wheel. He's entitled to that space. He's entitled to that corner, according to regulations, and nobody is speaking about that. And so I think that's very poor from Leclerc, and he played a part in that crash. But we've criticised Perez a lot, and it's only right that we give him his credit where it's due. And so a 9 out of 10 from me. And then for Yuki Tsunoda, I gave a 5 out of 10. But for Lance Stroll, I gave a 3 out of 10 because there is a reason that Tsunoda retired so early on, and that is because of Lance Stroll, because of the contact that he made with Yuki Tsunoda on lap 1.
So that rounds off our average driver ratings review. Ethan, just before we look over our predictions for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, you mentioned there the racing incident between Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz, and you even added Charles Leclerc into the mix. Who do you think was at fault? Most people are putting it down to a racing incident. Some people are saying that Carlos Sainz veered too much to the left. Some people are saying that Sergio Perez veered to the right to cut Carlos Sainz off. Some people are saying that Carlos Sainz gave Sergio Perez enough room, and Sergio Perez did have enough room on the left-hand side to kind of make an escape from Carlos Sainz, squeezing him a little bit. Who do you think plays what role in that whole fiasco?
It's a racing incident all day long. They both converge. They both could have. Perez could stay further to the left. Sainz could stay further to the right. I don't think there's one driver more at fault. But like I said, I think that situation has only been caused because Charles Leclerc has actually pushed Perez off the track, and then Perez and Sainz going wheel to wheel into turn two. I think it's quite strange that nobody has picked up on that fact that Leclerc did push Perez off the track when Perez was entitled to space at the corner. So yeah, it's a racing incident all day long for me.
On to looking over at our predictions. Ethan, do you want to start us off with what sort of star predictions you had and what kind of success you had in them?
Absolutely zero success, I'm afraid. Is this for Baku? Wait. We'll cut this out. Is this for Baku or Monza? You said Monza earlier. Baku. Oh yeah, cut that out. So for my star predictions, I was absolutely spot on. I had 3+ DNFs, and the Sainz Perez crash helped me massively with that. So only two to that point. And then I had a Charles Leclerc podium, and obviously finished second. So very happy with that.
And I think I'll match you. I had two star predictions correct. I think arguably the two star predictions. This could be the first time this season that both of us have had both of our star predictions correct. You went 3+ DNFs and a Charles Leclerc podium. I went Ollie Behrman Q2. What did the boy do? He only delivered that. And I had a Ferrari podium, and Charles Leclerc stepped on the podium. So 2 out of 2 for both of us. In qualifying, though, oh dear God, that's a complete catastrophe for me. 0 out of 10, 0 out of 5 for me. And then in the race, it was only the Charles Leclerc second place that I predicted correctly. So a complete polar opposite from my star predictions. And yeah, in terms of qualifying race predictions, absolutely awful. Star predictions nailed on, but how did you get on? How did you fare with your qualifying and race predictions?
Pretty well, actually. So I had Charles Leclerc to qualify on pole position. Then I had Lando Norris in second, Oscar Piastri third, and Carlos Sainz fourth. So you take Lando Norris out of that, and I would have had the top three correct. So I had Piastri third and fourth, Piastri and Sainz third and fourth, as opposed to second and third. And then I had George Russell in fifth. So 2 out of 5 for me on that one. And then I got the top two in the race correct as well. I had Piastri from Leclerc in the race. I had Lando Norris in third, and then I had Hamilton fourth and Russell fifth. So just 2 out of 5 for me on that one. But if it wasn't for the crash there, I think I might have got an extra point. Oh no, I wouldn't have. If only one of those retired, I would have got that extra point but no, not to be. So 2 out of 5 for me on that one. 2 out of 5 in the qualifying as well. So 6 out of 12 for me this weekend. I'm quite happy with that.
Well, at least you beat me for the first time in a long time, because I only got 3 out of 12. Let's move on to F2 as F3 is completely finished. Where we had a look at Leonardo Fornaroli winning that championship last time out. But it's time to look at round 12 of the FIA Formula 2 Championship. In qualifying, it was Richard Verschoor that beat out Mercedes 2025 driver Kimi Antonelli in qualifying to claim pole position for the feature race. Victor Martins qualified third, Zane Maloney fourth. All of those guys battling in the top 10 of the championship in F2. Kush Miney and Gabriel Bortoleto made it a Invicta Racing third row for the feature race. Joshua Dirksen in the AIX racing car in 7th. Gabriele Mini on his debut in Formula 2 qualified 8th, with Jack Crawford in 9th and Christian Mansell on his debut in 10th. And in other news, Luke Browning qualified just outside the top 10 in his Formula 2 debut as he qualified in 11th. But moving on to the sprint race, it was Christian Mansell that started on pole position. He wasn't able to claim the race victory. It was actually Joshua Dirksen who, I believe it was in Monza, had an absolute rocket ship of a car and nobody was stopping him from getting past. He wasn't able to finish the race on top. But in Baku, he was able to finish the race on top as he finished P1 with 10 points and plus 1 point for an extra fastest lap. Jack Crawford finished in second, with Gabriele Mini in third, claiming his first podium in Formula 2 on his debut. Victor Martins finished fourth, with Gabriel Bortoleto, Paul Aron, Kimi Antonelli and Christian Mansell rounding off the points. And in the feature race, it was obviously Vashaw and Kimi Antonelli on the front row. And Richard Vashaw converted that into a race victory. Victor Martins finished in second place, with Kimi Antonelli in third, Gabriel Bortoleto in fourth, Joshua Dirksen in fifth, Paul Aaron in sixth, Luke Browning in seventh, Jack Crawford in eighth, Dennis Helget in ninth, and Christian Mansell in 10th. So two of the new rookies in the top 10 for that one. But crucially, after Baku, it's seen Gabriel Bortoleto take the championship lead, the rookie driver, moving up from Formula 3 last season into Formula 2, and he's leading the championship by 4.5 points over Isaac Hadjar, who drops down to second. Zane Maloney is in third, Paul Aaron in fourth, crawling back his kind of second half of his season woes. He's slowly crawling back into the picture. He's in fourth. Jack Crawford is in fifth. Kimi Antonelli is in sixth. Franco Colapinto obviously won't race in the championship at all anymore. He's in seventh. Victor Martins in eighth. Dennis Hauger in ninth. And Richard Vashaw in 10th. Ethan, did you catch much action of the Formula 2? I think those 11 points for Gabriel Bortoleto in the feature race have propelled him into the championship lead. I believe he is the third championship leader. We obviously had Paul Aaron lead the way. No, we've had four championship leaders. We've had Zane Maloney lead the way. We've had Paul Aaron lead the way. We've had Isaac Hadjar lead the way. And now it's the McLaren Junior of Gabriel Bortoleto leading the way. Can he do a Senna charge and win the Formula 2 championship? What do you think? What do you make of his chances?
Well, I mean, he's in the best position for it, isn't it? 2 races to go, and he's got a slender lead. Obviously benefiting from Hadjar not having the best weekend. But I tell you what, it's good to see some of the F3 rookies get a couple of races ahead of next season. You know, Gabriel Mini, Luke Browning, like you said, get some races under their belt before obviously having a full campaign next year. So that's good to see. Didn't catch much of it myself, but from everything I read, it was a couple of very good races.
Obviously, like you said, the Formula 3 rookies have had a bit of a run out. Gabriella Maini obviously filled in at Prema for Ollie Behrman, who had fulfilled his F1 duties. Christian Mansell is getting on the last couple of races in Formula 2 due to Roman Stanek's contract expiring at Trident, and Luke Browning jumping into the ART team. Do you think that these kind of races, obviously Gabriele Maini will only have the two races, the sprint race and the feature racing, until he jumps up into F2 next season. Do you think that sometimes these sort of driver swaps, should we say, benefit the junior drivers, and it benefits the Formula One teams to kind of fish out the best of a bad bunch in the pool of young drivers?
Well, absolutely, yeah. I mean, this weekend was actually perfect for both for Behrman and for Miney, because if you think Behrman has got be given a race in the Haas next year where he's going to be. So that made sense for everybody. He's not fighting for the F2 title or anything like that. He's in a position where this weekend I'm sure, would have been very valuable, not just in terms of getting to grips with that car, but getting to know all the team members. He's going to be in there next season, so having a little bit of experience is always going to help. And then for Miney as well, had a great F3 campaign, and then comes into the Prema, where I'm sure he's going to be next season. I'm not sure if that's confirmed or not, to be honest, but comes into the team and has that experience. And again, it can only benefit him moving forward, getting some action under his belt.
It's not been confirmed just yet, but I think he's likely to take that Prema seat. Obviously, Formula 3 at Prema, and I think he is likely to take that seat. But finally, let's look at our predictions ahead of the Singapore Grand Prix this weekend. It's set to be a direct one, so one of my star predictions revolves around that. Actually, both of them do, because I've gone for Red Bull DNF for one of my star predictions. We remembered what happened in that infamous racing start incident between Verstappen, Kimi Raikkonen, and Sebastian Vettel, where Verstappen was sandwiched between the two Ferrari drivers and all of them crashed out. So I've gone with for Red Bull DNF. And I've gone for my other star prediction. I've gone full wets used. I think the full wets will be in use. I think the inters are going to be used maybe in qualifying, but in the race, I think it will be chucking that down that much. Uh, the full wets will be used. Hey, I'm no weather reporter, but I can guarantee you now, once I've said this, it's not going to rain at all. But on the weather radar, it was showing rain. So that's why I put that down as my star predictions. So Red Bull DNF, full wets used in my 2-star predictions. Ethan, what are your 2-star predictions?
So I've gone for Perez to beat Verstappen. This is in the race. He's coming off the back of actually a couple of decent performances, Sergio Perez. And let's not forget, just a couple of years ago, Sergio Perez won the Singapore Grand Prix, whilst Max Verstappen finished down in, I think it was fourth or fifth. And then for my other one, I've gone for a bit of a fun one to get some kind of penalty throughout the weekend. He's just come off the back of a race ban. He's got 7 races to go. He's got a clean slate of the penalty points. So I reckon he's going to have a bit of fun with it. I reckon he could be used as a block to help Hulkenberg out. He could just fancy a bit of go-karting. Who knows? But I reckon Kevin Magnussen will get a penalty of some description this weekend.
Well, I mean, for Kevin Magnussen, why not? It's his last couple of races in Formula One. It could be forever. We never know. But why not? Why not end it on a bang? And a bang being a couple of crashes here and there. On to qualifying in the race. So in qualifying, I've actually gone for a McLaren 1-2. I've gone for Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri in first and second. I've gone for Charles Leclerc sandwiched between those guys in third. And yeah, I've actually gone for a McLaren Mercedes sandwich with a Ferrari in the middle. So I've gone Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, Charles Leclerc third, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton fourth and fifth in qualifying, that is.
So we got the same top 3, just in a different order. I've gone for Norris on pole as well. I've then gone for Charles Leclerc to beat Oscar Piastri to second, and then Carlos Sainz and Lewis Hamilton fourth and fifth.
And then in the race, I've gone with a McLaren Ferrari sandwich. So I've gone with Oscar Piastri winning the race, with Lando Norris in second, Lewis Hamilton sandwiched in third, and I've gone Charles Leclerc fourth and Carlos Sainz fifth. Very fun sandwiches here. I don't know. I don't know. I put my hands up when I'm looking back at this. I don't know how I've managed it, but somehow I've managed it, and it's a very fun concept. I've got a McLaren and a Mercedes sandwich, and then in the race, I've got a McLaren Ferrari sandwich. So there you go. Those are my predictions. A few sandwiches.
I've gone 2 by 2 for the top 4. So I've gone for Norris and Piastri 1 and 2, like yourself. And then gone for Charles Leclerc third, Carlos Sainz fourth, and Lewis Hamilton in fifth.
But that rounds off our episode on the Azerbaijan Grand Prix review and our Singapore Grand Prix preview. That rounds off episode 28. Thank you, Ethan, for finally joining me. How was that, mate? Did you enjoy being back after such a long time?
Yeah, good stuff, and looking forward to Singapore this weekend. It should be a good one.
Obviously, it's with the final double header, I believe, or is it? Because have we got another double header coming up?
I mean, we got a triple header coming up, so I think we got 3 weeks after Singapore, and then we got a triple header.
There you go. There you go. The man said it himself. But thank you for listening into this episode. We'll be back next week reviewing the Singapore Grand Prix. In the meantime, keep listening, keep streaming, doing all that good stuff. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.